GFCA this year. And he's took on the task of wastewater management in the village center with great energy, and has involved people in all aspects of that, people who are experts in terms of the public sewer, people who are experts in terms of advanced technologies in Series 2, people who from the county in the zoning in Series 3. So I'd really like to thank Glenn and then turn it over to him. He's just been masterful at this. Glenn?
At the outset of the series of meetings, of which this is the fifth, we all recognize that historically Great Falls has been concerned about the potential for development as a result of water lines and sewer lines. It was particularly concerned to those who've been here a long time in the early days of Great Falls, when we saw Sterling Park and Manassas Park, after a sewer line and water line went in there, there was a lot of development. In Great Falls, we don't have these facilities generally. There is principally everything has been developed here now. There's but 2 commercial parcels that don't have anything on them, and the residential is over 90% developed, approximately. And so about 10 years ago, after a series of problems with some of the commercial septic fields, the Business and Professional Association, which had just formed, began to be concerned about the long-term issue of wastewater management. And about 4 years ago, the Citizens Association started to look into this as well. And then this year, last fall, we reinstituted our wastewater management committee, and the purpose of this was to help the community understand the issues better than perhaps they had in the past. And so the series of 4 meetings leading up to this point, the first one dealt with what is the condition of the existing septic systems, and try to guess how long they might still be useful for. The second was to identify what some of the issues are if the county were to establish a sewer district surrounding the commercial center. And the third one had to do with the potential for new technology helping to prolong the lifetime of the existing septic system. Septic fields are a real issue. Then the fourth one, we tried, with help from the county, to get a quantitative estimate of this issue of spurring development. And, you know, some people have thought that that was an issue which would definitely happen. I've heard people say, well, we'll have Tyson's 3 here if we get a sewer line. And people have valid concerns, and some are different from others, but we all have different views. So what we wanted to try to do is educate, or give an opportunity anyway, for people to get more information. And then tonight, I'll be giving a little recap of what we've learned. And then the Business and Professional Association will be stating what alternative they think would be the right one to go with. And then we're going to have a community-wide polling sometime in the fairly near future to try to gauge how the overall community feels about this. It's essentially a political issue. We saw our previous supervisor think that it was not a problem to put a 6-inch water line down Honor Chapel Road without really consulting the community first. And so I think we learned from that experience, and I think certainly John Faust knew of that when he ran for our supervisor. He's been really listening to our community, and so we thought it would be fair then to give him the results of a community-wide balloting of the views on whether or not the county should establish a sewer district surrounding the commercial center, which then would permit having a sewer line. I'll get into a little bit more of the details. The poll will be the entire 2206 zip code. Some 5,500 homes reside there, and we will gain more voting, we feel, by having it opened up that wide. If I could have the next one. Oh, that's pretty. Let's all go there. These are the three alternatives. The status quo, continuing using the septic fields but with advanced pretreatment of the wastewater so as to reduce the potential for solids going into the septic field and perhaps allowing it to operate for some extended period of time. And then the third one, if you could bring that up, is a sewer district with a sewer line. Now, the November meeting, the Public Works Department presented information on the sewer line. The other meeting, the first meeting, actually showed the difficulties that have been going on with the existing septic fields and septic systems, and I'll briefly give you where that stands. If I could have the next slide. There you go, that's the one. This is a map of the area we're talking about. This is Walker Road, Georgetown Pike. And the County Health Department did a survey in 2005, published a report, and then we asked them to update that report, and they did that, and they came out and gave us a rundown what's happening here. Oh, Great Falls has gotten bigger.
This is what happens when you put the sewer in.
Okay. So what we have here is the Safeway Shopping Center, the post office, village center, and the school, and then we have the library. No, this is the Grange, the old schoolhouse, the library, and then up to Great Falls School. Now, the ones shown in red or orange are sites where the septic field actually plugged, couldn't be repaired. The ones in yellow are wetter than the county thinks they should be. The ones in green are percolating quite well. We asked the county how much longer this could operate before one of the major ones could fail. They didn't give us, you can't project the future, but it's obvious by the number of ones that have problems that it's not going to last forever. It's certainly acceptable for the next couple years, few years, I don't know. But it's definitely not a long-range alternative. And the Citizens Association doesn't want to wait for the community to look into this and try to make its choice. So that's why we undertook to have this series of information meetings. Actually, if you look at the red line there, it's an example of what it costs if you do have a system plugging. The county, in building the fire station, was not in conformance with the county rules, which say that you can't have a construction unless you have a way to deal with your wastewater, and they were on pump and haul for several years. So they did have enough money, and they went ahead and purchased the 1 acre commercial lot right behind the fire station in order to have a septic field. So it's a $1 million expenditure for a septic field. And now, they happen to have land adjacent to the fire station. There's no spare land here. There's no spare land over here. And so the flexibility is limited. In the case of the 7-Eleven, there were 2 septic fields. One of them is plugged, and the other one's still operating. Many of these have had difficulties over the years, and they've done repairs. And in the case of the septic system that serves this area, it actually does have a 35-year-old pretreatment system that is still operating, but it's getting old and spare parts are hard to come by. So the maintenance cost of the older systems keeps going up. Next slide. There you go. This shows a conceptual sewer district. Now, in order to have a sewer line, the county at the Board of Supervisors level has to legally establish the boundary. And this is just a conceptual one. It shows enveloping not only the businesses, but 6 government entities, including the school, the old schoolhouse, this building, the library, and the federal post office. So, in order to establish this and have some of the concerns that people have had addressed, the county defines this, and the ordinances that apply to a sewer district are aimed at allowing landowners within a sewer district to hook up to the sewer, but not landowners outside the sewer district. And so we have to ensure, if the county is going to define a sewer district, that it's defined to meet the needs of the community. Now, the sewer line itself was also studied by the Public Works, and the shortest way would be down Walker Road to where the existing sewer system is, about 2 miles down Walker Road. And the county would not build the system for the community. The community landowners would have to foot the bill. It's possible that the county could build it, but then they would back charge through operating fees and hookup fees. I think it's something like $5 a 100 gallons or something on that order. And the cost would be borne by the users. Now, the initial cost estimate for the sewer line was $7.5 million for this route. But we discovered they assumed they'd have to go right down the center of Walker Road, which would mean a lot of traffic tie-ups. It would mean They'd have to repave the road. And so we questioned whether it couldn't be done alongside the road with simpler equipment. And indeed, when they actually showed us the VDOT right-of-way maps, it's twice as wide as the road. So it seemed feasible then to put it alongside the road. And so the county quickly reassessed and guessed that it might be about $4 million. The question's been raised about whether parcels outside the sewer district could hook up to the sewer. It's not allowed by the ordinance. There is a provision, and I'm not an expert on that, but there is a provision for what's called a hardship condition. If somebody has a septic system and the septic field is plugged and there's no way to remediate it on site. Under those conditions, I understand from the public works people, then they do allow a hookup. Now, the difficulty here is this is a pressurized main. In other words, there's pumped from here down. So the entire main is pumped. It's under pressure. You usually think of sewer lines as being gravity drained, where all you need to do is plug a line in it and the water will flow into it. Well, that won't happen here. The county did not want to go, in this case, with a gravity system because it would have to go down the stream valley, which would mean condemning people's land, doing excavation in the stream valleys, and a lot of environmental issues were avoided by going down the road right away. So it makes it very difficult to tie in, even if you have a septic system which is in trouble. So that is two protections there against expanded use. Could I have the next one? Now, there's a lot written into these three red lines. If you had been at the 1.5 to 2 hour sessions, you would know that there's a lot between the lines here. And for those of you who aren't and weren't able to come, you probably missed my droning and are better off for it. But on the status quo, it's just not a long-term option. So it's not something we should plan on doing. We should do in an orderly way, pick a longer-term alternative. The question then becomes, how long is long enough? And the advanced pretreatment alternative is a technically feasible thing. We had a company from Oregon called Arenco who has their systems all over the country, including 2,500 in Virginia and now one in Great Falls, where basically in addition to the septic tank, which you all have, they add another container which has some plastic fiber material, and the septic tank effluent goes into that container, and then it is treated again. So the septic tank operates in an anaerobic environment. The second stage is in an aerobic environment. There's a tiny vent which allows a little air to come in. So it's a better treatment. The solids get broken down more completely, and it's logical then that there would be less solids going into the septic field and they would tend to last longer. Now, there is some maintenance with this system because it's got more into it. There's automatic controls on the pumps. The state requires a service contract for these kinds of things. and they actually have telemetry via satellites to their headquarters and can monitor the systems from Oregon, believe it or not. But the system that we have today, one thing I should have mentioned is they're very susceptible to grease. And when you have heating facilities, you have grease. And although people put in grease traps, after significant failures occurred, they're still having some difficulty with grease. It basically has to be cooled in order for the grease to coagulate and then be skimmed off the top. And it's not a perfect system. This advanced system is somewhat less susceptible to grease, but still has a potential there. The on-site advanced pretreatment was estimated at $1.3 million. And that's for new tanks, these pumps, and the secondary treatment container for each of the 22 systems totaled up $1.3 million. Don't ask me if I believe those numbers. They haven't factored in the Great Falls effect. It could come out higher. We just don't know. In order to have a better estimate, you have to have a really detailed engineering analysis, which we don't have at this stage. Now, the sewer district and the sewer line, they also had, the same company, had an alternative to the way the county does it today. It's called a step sewer. And this is where they use these same pumps, special little pump, that puts out enough pressure that it can pump from each tank all the way to Cove and Run. In the case of the county sewer, they have to have a big collection tank at the edge of the sewer district and then a big lift pump. That's the traditional way sewers are done. That's part of the reason for the traditional system costing roughly $4 million and this alternative system costing about $1.6 million. And both would go down, the line would go down the side of the road. So in any event, the cost is borne by the owners of the properties. If the county decided to include all the businesses and the government facilities, then there would logically be some kind of share line. I haven't the foggiest where that would cut, but that's an issue that would have to be dealt with. Now, the issue of spurring development was one we spent an entire meeting on. The zoning people from the county came over and gave us a tutorial on C8 and C6 districts and what the constraints on development were. And basically, if you want to ask the question of how much more development could occur, how much more dense could the development be, it really boils down to we would be freeing up 8 acres that are now used for septic fields. And they could be used for something else. It turns out that the two largest of the 22 septic fields are on residential property. The one behind the Safeway and the one behind the post office. So the rest of them are, some of which are also on residential. On the order of a half of this 8 acres is in dribs and drabs within the commercial development areas. So if you wanted a numerical estimate, then you could have perhaps 16% more floor areas in the commercial sector, perhaps half of it on commercial zone land, and perhaps half of it on residential. Now, the uses in the commercial sector would continue to be under the controls of the zoning ordinance, which control the height, they control which uses are allowed, and they specify what other things the land has to have. Like for additional office spaces, you need parking. In fact, that's the lion's share of the additional land. Of the 73 acres in this entire area, we have 8 of it in septic fields. So that's about 16% effect. And so you might get a total of 1 additional acre of floor area if we went to a septic, away from the septic toward a sewer. So it's an increase. There are also people who are looking forward to someday having additional community uses. And the public uses can be put on the residential property with a special permit or a special exception, depending on what it is. And so the idea of having a community center someday in Great Falls could be helped if this land were available. And I'm not going to go so far as to say made possible if there was a sewer line, but it certainly wouldn't be hampered by having a sewer line. So if I could have I think it's the last slide. No, that's going back right. There it is. So really the bottom line question is, will the Great Falls community support having a sewer district and a sewer line? The developers do not need the community approval for maintaining their system or for upgrading it to include an advanced treatment system. But because the county has to establish the sewer district, they do need our support for that. And what we're hoping then is after the session's done tonight, we'll put out an update of our white paper that you could all pick up a copy of here to incorporate additional thoughts that come about during the discussion part of tonight's session. And a ballot that will go to every household. I think there's something like 5,700 in the community, and we will collect the ballots and dutifully report the results publicly, and that will be that. Then the community will have said what it wants. So I think I've run through about everything.
There's a lot of people in the room, and there's only about 5 people signed up to speak. So if you want to speak, could you please sign up with Ann over there? Or maybe she could pass them around. We got 3 more. Okay, good. Okay, next we're going to hear from the BPA. Michael Vandergriff, their vice president. So,
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you for the Citizens Association for the opportunity to speak today. If I may just take a moment, my name is Michael Vandergriff. I'm with the Great Falls Business and Professional Association. I'd like to also introduce 2 other officers of the Business and Professional Association. Ralph Lazario, who's our president, and Stephen Delaney, who's also a vice president. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce some of the, excuse me one second, can you find it? I'd like to also take a moment to introduce some of the property owners here in Great Falls. Ralph Lazario, representing the Professional Center. Stephen Delaney, representing the Oliver's Corner and the Great Falls Business Center. Brian Downey, representing Saul Centers. and Mike Kearney representing the Village Center. Just hit this button. This one. You can go to the next slide. Kind of jumped already ahead of you. Tonight's agenda, I just looked through the introduction. We're going to give you a little bit of a historical overview in terms of the Business and Professional Association, give you an update of the current septic conditions, and we'll present our position statement, and then we'll provide any show our support and questions towards the end. Ralph, if you want to start with the historical aspect.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because Glenn did such a great job on that. Part of what I was going to say is just redundant. Basically, this first thing on the Great Falls Business and Professional Citizens Association, we've had a good working relationship with the Citizens Association. Over the years, there's been a Shop Local campaign, which we really appreciated. We've got involved in some setback issues in Georgetown Pike over the years. So the relationship has been very solid, very good with the Citizens Association. When we get to septic fields, not to be too redundant, but if we kind of close our eyes and think of Great Falls as it was 40 plus years ago, we had Buck's Store, which some of you may recognize. That was sort of Buck's Store, Country Store was sort of the commercial district for Great Falls. He had a revolving charge count there where you just walked in and took what you want. He was what I would say the epitome of the business center, and I might add I had the privilege and the honor of treating Buck. He was really the true town mayor and a great guy. But that was the central business district. That was the vibrant part, and at that time it filled the need and it was great. We also had over there the 7-Eleven and an old firehouse, and the firehouse served as a good focal point for the community. Then in the early 70s became a rebirth of the commercial district as we know it today. We saw 2 shopping centers, some office buildings, and basically they were all developed on the support of wastewater management using the septic systems as we know today. Over the years we've seen repairs, pump and haul, redesign, and a lot of issues with them, but today they're still thriving, some limping along better than others. The real issue is wastewater management as we know it today in the central business district will probably not support the business district over the next 40 years. I know that's kind of a profound statement. I'm not saying absolute, but there's a good possibility something needs to be done. The real question is, what will be the tipping point? Do we decide collectively as a group to attack it as we started to and come up with a solution, or do we wait for that tipping point and then run into a crisis of sort? Status quo, as Glenn kind of referred to, is not really an option, so we need to do better than that. The next topic here is the impact of the commercial district. I think the impact has been very solid. We've had a very vibrant small business community that serves the community well. Over the years, we've had events, we had Taste of Great Falls, we've had parades, parties, Halloween gatherings, Christmas celebrations, and just a multitude of events that I think has really benefited the general community, and I think this is what the community has wanted. My closing statement, I'm going to refer back to the survey that was done, the 2020 survey that the Citizens Association did, that brought up a couple of really salient points. Ideal picture of Great Falls community. Our community is dedicated to preserving a semi-rural character. I know we all agree upon it. Our community is enriched by our small town village life. And when the description of the village center by 75% of the people, what the respondents said is they pictured the ideal Great Falls Community Center to be a small town center where family and friends gather. They also wanted a large variety of restaurants and coffee shops. I think the town center, as we see it today, serves that purpose quite well. And hopefully it will continue on. The BPA some years ago described Great Falls as a great place. Great Falls is a great place, and there's stickers around. What we don't want to see in the future, if we keep the status quo, and not to be on the negative side, but Great Falls is a great place as a pump and haul district, and I'm sure none of us want to see that. That would be a bad slogan. So, to keep it on the positive side, we have a vibrant community that's servicing the community well. We've got a Band-Aid approach on some of the systems. We need the support of the residential community so that the business community can continue doing what they're doing. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'd like to introduce Mike Kearney, who really has the nuts and bolts of our presentation. For Mike Kearney and his involvement in the community, not only with wastewater, but a multitude of other issues. Great Falls would not be the place, and the business district would not be the place that it is today.
Thank you, Ralph. No, before I start my statement, I can't tell you how impressed I've been with Glenn and the support of the GFCA and how they've actually brought this to this point today. I mean, to do all the thinking that Glenn has put together for the 5 meetings, to compile and have John Faust's support of bringing in all the county employees to actually bring this to an educational level for the community of exactly how the whole systems work. I think it's very important and very valuable. And I think it has calmed the nerves of people that have been out there for years who've had a lot of negative things to say about bringing septic to sewer to Great Falls. But he's also educated and informed in a way that I'm so impressed about the whole presentation that he's done, and I'm proud to be here tonight as one of the closers. But I'm here to talk about a little bit more of the nuts and bolts about what we've been talking about tonight. And some of these things Glenn's have already talked about in his opening presentation, but obviously everyone knows this is a honey dipper or a pump and haul truck. And over the years, the people who've lived here and done business in this community for so long, you've seen more and more of those trucks running here between Great Falls Septic, 5-Star, All-Star. It's something, each one of those trucks only handles 2,500 gallons. You'll see on the next slide that we talked about that the current usage of the Great Falls Commercial District as it sits is over 30,000 gallons a day. Every day. That is not on a high day. That's not on a low day. We are pumping 30,000 gallons a day into the ground every day. That is 650-gallon barrels that we put in the ground every day. I can speak for my shopping center. We're pumping 9 to 10,000 on average. I know from BF Saul Center, they're pumping 9 to 10. If you add the elementary school, the library, the other smaller commercial businesses, they're averaging another 9 to 10 to 11 to 12,000 a day, every day, of higher concentrated waste material. Because we're in the business and we're in the schools, we have to have higher sanitation than you do in your households. We have to use higher levels of cleaning materials. You know, we have higher concentrations of chlorine. This is what we do. We have to keep it safe for the public. We're allowed to dispose of this amount by right. I think the field in the Village Center is rated at 12,500 a day. I believe the BF Saul Center is 14,000 a day. This is what we've had for use since the mid-70s when these systems were implemented. Both of our centers, when you actually have the square footage of what was presented in the zoning of, I believe it was 340,000 square feet in the commercial district of total build out for commercial properties. Between the Saul Center and the Village Center, we currently are at 170 to 180,000 square feet. So between the two shopping centers, we handle about 60% of the commercial district ourselves. So between the two of us, we're at 20,000 plus a day, 7 days a week. Where's this water going? Into the aquifer. You still have homes just outside of the commercial district that are on a well. We do have county water here, but there are wells within seeing distance of the Village Center. It's just something that, at this point, when we talk about the status quo, I don't think it's an option. From the Village Center side, we have a $60,000 a year budget just to handle our pre-treatment facility. Last year, we had to replace a 5,000-gallon underground storage tank, which is one of 3 of ours. We had to replace because it was 30 years old. The concrete was caving in because of the sewer gases. It cost us afterwards $52,000 to replace that one tank. We have an on-site engineer who comes in every week, inspects our facilities, 5-star we use. They're there every month to pump our grease traps, our trash traps, everything. We do the best we can do. It was the second option on Glenn's. I don't even like that option, and I've been there for 30 years. Why? Because for us, I don't enjoy the odor over the village green. Everybody's been there, seen it on a low barometer day. There's nothing we can do. We have to vent those tanks. We have to vent the stack on a pre-treatment facility. Can we survive the BF Salt Center and us another 10, 15 years? Sure. We can continue to band-aid the problem. 20 years, or as Ralph said, 40 years? I don't know if that's the answer. I don't know if we could still be there. Obviously, the 5-star septic trucks are 2,500 gallons. We're pumping 10,000 a day. That's 4 full trucks a day running down Walker Road if one of our systems has a failure. We're not going to close. We'll do just like the 7-Eleven. I mean, not the 7-Eleven, all 7-Elevens I'm pumping all, but the fire department. You go on emergency backup systems, you go to pump and haul. You sign a contract with the hauler and you say, you need to haul this out till we can fix our problem. We don't want to do that. We have businesses, we like our community, we like being here. We want to be a supporter of the community, but we feel that we really need to have a result that we can all work with. When we talked about the current build out, Glenn brought up that, you know, there's 2 or 3 commercial properties still left. On our particular side of the village center, we have a building lot that is currently approved for a 9,000 square foot building that hasn't been built. Not because of sewer, or not because of parking, just because we haven't built it. We could start construction tomorrow, but we're not planning on it, at least not tomorrow. But the reason I wanted to inform that is, and I think it's important, is because there are potential building by right currently under the current status that we are approved already under our septic or our parking allocations on these commercial properties to do further build out. So if tomorrow the sewer happened to be approved to come in and all these buildings went up here, it says, look how it will change. But that's not true because we could build them now. So I think another important part I want to go over is what Glenn said about the residential property. For the village center, on my side of the street, we have a 2.5 acre parcel that's owned by Bob Moore. It's not even owned by the Village Center Condominium Association, that we have our septic fields on. It's residential property, and it's, and we have it by right until another system is approved. So we could still pump into that field where the Christmas tree is for the next 30, 40, 50 years. But if sewer came in, would that property become open? When they talked about that in zoning, they said yes, that would possibly come open for residential, but all of a sudden the roadway that is used as the access road that's currently there, where people park for the lacrosse field and things, would not be allowed. That road would have to be larger. That because all of a sudden it's an access to residential property, so all of a sudden you would lose some of that property. There's other restrictions to control density as in parking. Currently, for those of you who remember the Falls Landing Restaurant, went to a few other restaurants and closed, and now it's the Great Falls Executive Suites. We have approximately 2,000 gallons a day right now that we could be using for another high water user in the village center. But we can't because we have a parking restriction. We can't park any more cars. So when you talk about how sewer would affect in our particular center, we still couldn't increase the square footage of commercial property because we don't have enough parking. So there's these restrictions already in place that really control the limits of the heights or the limits of the commercial build-out because of other restrictions as in setbacks, as parking, and there's other things that I think are considered a controlling issue for many people who know me, I mean, I'm all about what I can do for my community, and I think we've got to this point today, and I think it's been an excellent educational program for everybody, and I really do think that, you know, we need to make a choice as a community how we create a healthy business district. We'll go on to the next one. So, one of the last things I want to bring up is about the failures, and you know, Glenn's already went over this. We didn't know he was going to go in, but obviously the two failures that are out there, one has already been fixed, and as Glenn said, the only reason the firehouse was fixed is because they could afford to buy the adjacent land. You know, there isn't any more land left in Great Falls from the business side except for a couple of lots on the north side of Walker Road. But for the two big players, the two big shopping centers, we don't have any other land for septic fields. And some of you know that the Village Center, due to Greece, back in the late 80s, had to tear up all their fields and start all over again because we never realized the impact of grease, not just grease, but soaps. Soaps not only from the restaurants, but from the hair salons. There used to be a pet store over there, a pet grooming area, and the soaps also was a clogging agent for the septic fields, and also killed the bacteria. So we had to redesign ours once already, and there's not a lot of room, at least on the Village Center side, to redesign or to fix a failing field. So, you know, I think we've gone over the 7-Eleven property. You know, they've just been band-aiding it for years, and they can just get along. I think from the business side, the BPA, we would love to see 7-Eleven do a little bit of a cosmetic change, but they're restricted now because they're not allowed to do anything because of the pump and haul. So they're only on emergency. I mean, they can't really stop them from operating because they are on one of their fields is still operational, the other one is on a pump and haul basis. But as the county health department considers a pump and haul is an emergency fix that they allow. For the two big shopping centers, I don't even think we want to think about that. Want to go to the next slide? So Mike, you want to come on up here and have a little closure on us and talk about the position statement that the business professionals put together?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Great Falls Business and Professional Association supports and encourages the Citizens Association to continue to move forward with this issue here in the community in regards to a petition or poll to show community support that we can move forward to remedy the wastewater issue and send it up the chain of command and up to Fairfax County and Supervisor Faust to see if we can remedy it. And the last thing we want to say is really support and really, again, Glenn has done an outstanding job in organizing this. We met with Glenn before he started it. He was very open with us. He was very welcoming in terms of our concerns and our in regards to putting this together. We understand that this has been a hot item in the community, and we wanted to be very informative. And I think Glenn deserves a round of show of support for the good work that he's put together. Thank you, Glenn.
Glenn, do you want to do some question and answers with the other people that want to talk? Or just before Glenn comes up, I see Lynn Simmons here. So Lynn's from the Village Green Day School, so she is a property owner. Is there any other property owners or representatives? Yeah, the Saddlery's here. And, but I mean, I thank you for the support of coming out tonight also. Are you going to be there, Glenn? Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Now, some people signed up to speak.
Maybe we could ask if there's any questions that of people who haven't signed up.
Okay, so the first person here is Dr. Forrest Rathman.
Not doctor. Wish it was. It's D Forrest, but my friends call me D. So I want to give you a little perspective on where I'm coming from. I'm one of the longest residents from here, having moved here in 1959 when it was truly rural, and I appreciate the idea that we want to keep it that way, or keep that atmosphere. But I've seen it grow, natural growth over the years, and the natural growth brought you people here. You haven't hurt us. You've done a great job improving the community. So let's get that behind us. Growth is not necessarily bad, and it'll be controlled. We've got, as was mentioned here, we've got the rules, Fairfax County rules on growth. The second thing is my background is one of construction industry, particularly the plumbing and heating industry. I was one of the first master plumbers in Fairfax County. I had one of the first master plumber licenses in Fairfax County, and made my living for years and years in the mechanical construction industry. One of the things mechanical contractors do is construct sewage disposal plants. And I'm talking about the big sewage disposal plants, like down at Blue Plains over in DC, where a lot of the sewage is pumped from the communities on down to. And in about 1970 or somewhere around then, they passed some EPA regulations requiring tertiary treatment, third stage treatment, because there's so much nasty stuff. It was mentioned, the chemicals that are prevalent now, so much nasty stuff that was not being treated in the old style sewage treatment plants, that they needed a third stage. And they've got massive equipment that takes this out and gets the effluent to the condition where they can return it to the rivers. So it's from that background I want to talk to you about what I've seen here now. I'm also a trustee having to do with the maintenance of the Great Falls United Methodist Church, and we have a septic tank system up there. And of course, one of the things that happened was the fire department came to us to ask if they could use some of our property to extend their drain field. And in looking at it, we found that the county wouldn't allow that. So they've obviously solved that problem. But they were pumping their sewage, as was mentioned by the Business Professional Association. A lot of pumping going on. But I want to tell you this, that this idea of on-site sewage disposal works great for the residents. Septic tanks have a long history of working fine. Many of you have them in your house, in your property. But commercially, as was mentioned, you got such an inflow of sewage into these things, they're not practical. You need to get this stuff down to the treatment plants where they have the treatment facilities to be able to take this stuff out. You're not going to get that with any kind of modern on-site facility. Furthermore, in the operation of a drain field, a lot of the way the liquid gets out of the drain field is to percolate to the surface and get dried by the sun and the atmosphere. In the wintertime, when you got frozen surface and you got snow on it, that can't happen. So now this stuff is locked down there below the surface and filling up the aquifers. Somebody mentioned the aquifers. Now there's a lady in our church just told me she has a property near the shopping centers there, and her well has been condemned because of the effluent getting into it. The county has agreed that they're going to furnish her bottled water. Folks, that's not just in hers. These aquifers go all over the place. So it's not just, if it's contaminating hers, you can believe it's probably getting into a lot of other ones. Now, whether you've been able to detect it or not, who knows? But it's there, and it's because in the wintertime, this effluent can't go up where it ordinarily goes, it goes down. Right now, as was mentioned, a lot of these things are overflowing. If it can't go up and it's too saturated to go down, it leaches out at the lowest place and starts trickling down into the streams. And that's what we got here. All of our streams around here are getting this stuff. And the little wild animals are treading through that thing and then coming into your yards there and leaving that stuff in your yards for your kids to play around in. This is a public health hazard of enormous magnitude. But it's solved when you get the sewage away from the community and let it be treated where it's supposed to be treated, in these commercial facilities. So my position is on this thing. I appreciate the presentation and the time that you've come in here to evaluate the different options, but to me there's only one option, And that option is to get the sewage away from Great Falls to a treatment facility that can handle it. Trying to manufacture some sort of on-site treatment facility is not the way to go. It will continue to it has to be maintained, and maintenance gives you another level of responsibility that can fail. Sewage lines, to get it away, is the traditional way, been working since Roman days, folks. We need to do it.
Michael, you're on this list. Do you want to speak?
No, I've already done.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Ralph Patton, our president for
First of all, I also want to thank Glenn, and not only Glenn, but the people who've been working on this for the last 3 years. You worked on it, Jim Luce worked on it, and Mike, you've been on the wastewater committees in the past, and have been constantly working on it. Ralph Lazaro has. So there's been a lot of work on it. There's been some talk about a timetable. I'd like to address that specifically. In August 2009, we had a meeting where the county professionals actually did give us a time limit. They said nothing is going, this is in 2009, 2 years ago, said nothing is critical for about 10 years. Roughly 10, 12 years, and then what we really have is 3 things. The need, where is the location of what we're going to be doing, and what are the density restrictions. When it comes down to the need, we've always had the problem of what could we do or not do. Is there really a viable pre-treatment system or isn't there? This has been argued in the past. And again, I want to thank Glenn for giving us all the opportunity to showing that there are options. But even the best pre-treatment option, which wasn't, Glenn mentioned rather quickly, but was in there, involves a sewer line. So I too will vote very strongly. There is one option that's no good, and that's status quo. We've got to do something. I'm not an engineer, I can't tell you what the best option is, but the option of doing nothing and waiting forever is not an option. Second thing is the location. Again, I don't want to be the one to tell you how big it is, but you've got some residences very near the village center which may or may not need to be put in. And in connection therewith, I think one of the things that the experts are going to, not me, going to have to look at is what restrictions are you going to have to put in defining the location. Do you or don't you include the residences? Certainly you want to include the Great Falls School because that will expand someday, and the firehouse. When you start going into some of the residential properties, I don't want to go into the pro or con of that, but I think that's one of the things you're going to have to look at. So the location as to how big it is beyond the actual commercial center of LaSalle Center, the Village Center, I think that's going to be one of the things that has to be looked at. The third thing is the density. And that's been the big argument for quite some time. And that's where you have some of the community members upset. I'm going to give you an example to show you that there is reason to be careful about the density. Let's talk about Georgetown Pike for 1 second as an example. In McLean, they have been very successful for the last 40 years, partially with the help of the political group, both Democrats and Republicans, working together to make sure that there was no extensive commercial development along, not just commercial, but also big residential development along Georgetown Pike and keeping it as it is. Here in Great Falls, if you start going out near the Seneca Road area, we're starting to see development which some of us aren't too happy with. And that's the reason I say the third element of what we're talking about is, and this project should not be stopped, but this project has to also look at what restrictions should be put in. And again, as I say, I'm for the sewer line, but we want to be sure that the community and the residents have restrictions which prevent extensive development. That's what we're worried about. We're not against the sewer line. We just want to make sure that it doesn't result in massive development.
Okay, I got input from an email from Christy Siak. She was the manager of the Village Center, and she wasn't able to be here. She had a conflict. The husband's out of town, the kids at home, kids have to go places and things like that. So anyway, and I don't think she's actually had an opportunity to see these presentations of the web people. But here's her comment. Every business owner in Great Falls knew when they bought or started their businesses that their property had septic and water systems. As such, they knew that one day these systems would need to be replaced. I too have a septic system on my residential property, and I know that one day I will have to get a new one at a substantial cost. My husband and I factored this into our decision to purchase our property. It seems, however, that the business people in this city have decided that they don't want to shoulder the cost in perpetuity and want to take an easy way out by contracting with the county for public sewer. It will, however, be the community that pays for this easy way out decision. They believe the beloved semi-rural feel that this community will be destroyed once public sewer is introduced. While I know promises will be made that limit sewer to the business district, once it's in, all you need is a few people in the neighborhood to start agitating for sewer to be extended, and so a domino effect. It may take a number of years, but it will be inevitable. I'm also well aware of the businesses here salivating at the prospect of expanding their properties once the public services are installed. Great Falls is such a special and unusual place, it would be a shame to turn it into just another suburban area. There are plenty of those out there in Fairfax County. If you don't like the limitations of living here in Great Falls, you can always go somewhere else where operating a business doesn't require the extra issues associated with septic and tanks and fields. That's Christine. Yeah. The next person that signed up is Marge Person. What is that? Nobody's got to get up.
I used to be very strongly against having any kind of sewage system in Great Falls. I've been here since 1970, okay? I was the manager for quite a while at Norman Foster when we were across the street where the flower shop is. We moved and went on the other side. There were days when you had to get out of the building because it stunk so, and it still does. I've been there 30 years, and I have never seen a community that doesn't realize that things do change. Things that I hate to see change. You've got implements now. There are lots of families, in fact, who are going to be having problems with their septic systems. What they're going to do, I don't know, because the wells are definitely getting contaminated around here. I now feel the only answer for the future of this town is to put a storage system in with tremendously strong proffers that are given out to the people in the entire community, the proffers put in with their deeds. So that as families change, as people get new houses, these run along in their deeds so they know what happened and that the storage system can only be set at certain points. That's just personal opinion from the retired.
Thanks, Mark. I was president of GFCA at one point, right? I thought. Yes, good. And Scott Knight.
Hello, my name's Scott Knight, and I live just catty corner from here. And I appreciate you all coming. Really echo what you all have to say. Sorry. And really, my main concern is that your piece of land that the Safeway currently sits on, there's the Safeway there, and then there's also where the septic field is, that's also zoned commercial. And I really strongly agree there do need to be some very strong, clearly worded proffers, because it's only because of the police that I'm not continuing to be waking up at night from the noise coming from the village, coming from your land. And also, if I haven't heard what you plan to do with that property, and haven't heard a commitment that that's not going to be a big noise generator once the septic field is gone. Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey Lindsay.
Thank you. I am perhaps new to this particular group, but I've lived in Great Falls now for 11 years, on and off. I have to do a lot of work out of town, so I come back, and every time I come back, I see something different, something new. But I wanted to make 3 points this evening, and I wanted to make the case against the sewer line. And my points are essentially technological. I am a chemical engineer by training. I did work a lot in sewage systems many years ago, although I do mostly computer science now. I don't believe that there isn't a technological solution to any of these problems. That sewer lines are always the strategy of last resort. In this age of biotechnology and development and anaerobic systems, you can easily get around all of the problems that we're discussing. And I think essentially to raise the issue of animals tracking in excrement into your house is probably really an overstatement of the issue. I don't think this is really the case. The second point I wanted to make really though was zoning. This is my main point this evening. The one thing you can't do, if a sewer line doesn't exist, you can't change the zoning. If the sewer line isn't there, you can't find a way to connect to it or a way to undo the ordinances. And what I've seen in my travels around many cities in America is once the sewer lines go in, that is the beginning of the end, almost invariably. Because ordinances can be undone, the developers can find ways round. There's already a loophole, which we've heard about this evening. There's a hardship loophole. Very, very easy if you want to put up a large building and get around the zoning. You just apply for a hardship exception. And that is always the way that these things, they start out with the very best of intentions, but invariably at the end, that it boils down to who can persuade and who can lobby and who can get the exceptions. And then it starts, I believe, and I agree with the email participant, a domino effect. And then finally the bill. Who pays for all of this in the end? The reality is it's almost invariably the community. One way or another, once you have sewer lines and water systems, invariably you find that it finds its way into the property taxes, it finds its way into what you have to pay to live here. The property densities go up, the developers make a killing, and the whole nature of the place changes its character completely. Invariably, the house that you thought you were living in, that you could afford, becomes too expensive because the property taxes are just too expensive now. You can't really stay where you are. You always end up having to sell. You can't pass properties on to your children because you just can't afford to. And so my final point is the nature of the changes to the character of the community will be profound. And this is just my experience, my opinion. I would say, in this case, I would strongly urge you not to vote for the sewer line, and that the second option, if one is needed, and bear in mind, you're dealing with a 30-year-old system here, of course you've got to replace it. It was probably under-designed because the people who first designed it never imagined the size of the community as it is now. But certainly the second option would be a very good way to manage development, solve all of the technological problems, and keep the community in the way that it is already. Thank you very much.
Kathleen Murphy, the young lady who brought us the 2020 survey.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Murphy, and I had the great privilege of conducting focus groups and talking to all of you and building up the questions for the 2020 survey. And while many have thanked Glenn, and I thank Glenn as well for a wonderful job, but there are also people here tonight who were part of the early circle of Great Falls residents who started maybe 25, 30 years ago to slowly and carefully take their stand to protect the semi-rural character of this community. And decision by decision, effort by effort, year after year, these players have been consistent and unveering in their love of the nature available in this community. And yes, we spoke in the 2020 survey that we value our village town. We love our town center. This is the place where we come together. This is where we meet our friends. This is where we greet. This is where we express our community spirit and enjoy being together. And we feel positive about our semi-rural town. And now we are asked a question about the needs of our business community. And we need to shape an answer. And where is this answer going to come from? How can we state who we are and what we mean and where we want to go? What is our yearning? I just want to state back to you what I heard, because I did attend each one of Glenn's meetings. I heard in the first meeting that the business community could have exerted more care of their septic system, that everybody did not get an A+ for maintenance. In the second meeting, I heard that there was a viable, state-of-the-art, on-site treatment that is very effective, uses anaerobic and aerobic techniques, and that the solid and waste material dissolve substantially. So instead of pumping your system out every 3 years, you could pump it out every 10 years. The effectiveness was so great. Then I heard in the next meeting, I also heard in the, there was a meeting about the sewer going down Walker Road and the pressure system for that, and that there was an effective way to do that. Then we had the zoning come here, and they said that the maximum by right construction of the business community would be about 40 feet as C8. That means either 5 floors of 8 foot high ceilings, or 4 floors of 10 foot high ceilings. And the square footage that they calculated per property, they have approximately about 350,000 square feet today. And that square footage, not counting for difficulties with parking, could be up to 700,000 square feet. So what that would mean is buildings that are 2 floors today could be 4 floors. And, so there is additional capacity that could be here. There would not be constraints on, restaurants, so there would be more restaurants and there would be more traffic. And yes, there is the parking issue. The business community has said they would like to be a healthy business district. And we would love for the business community to be a healthy business district. We wish you well, and we wish to support you, and we wish to be there for you, but our vision is to be a semi-rural community with a town center where we are known. We are there for each other. We greet each other. We know each other. Being small scale is important. It is an inherent part of our vision. So what, the governing idea that has roots 25 or 30 years ago is one of sustainability. It is one of being limited, of choosing limits, honoring limits, and respecting those limits, and having a limitation on how far we can go with development. There is a Lester Brown in the World Economic Report. He says that waste was meant to go to the earth. Waste fertilizes the earth. It nourishes the earth. It improves our earth. Whereas waste that goes into our water supply pollutes our water supply, contaminates our water supply. So the state-of-the-art management of waste, not shipping it long distances and eventually dumping it into some water supply, is enlightened. And it's a possibility that we should consider. I have my own personal observations of the impact of going for sewer. My husband is from a town in Greece, and 27 years ago, when we went to visit, in the town center, they had, little closets with outhouses, and you go in and there's this big dark hole, and everybody goes there. Well, they brought sewer there, and there's now floors of buildings, and you can peek between the building to see the mountains, because so much development was possible. You can look at, I remember my daughter wanted to go to a concert at Atlantic City, and I thought, oh, I can't wait to see the beach. I grew up by the beach, and I reserved a room. I want to see the ocean, an ocean view. And I was in a room up on the top floor, about a mile away from the ocean, and we walked on the boardwalk, and all the smell of beers were being pumped out from the exhaust of the air conditioning systems, and there was absolutely no connection anymore with nature. The nature was all gone because of the sewer coming to the beach. And all the little property owners along the beach are in poverty because all these big hotels were able to grow up in that space. So I think that we need to keep in mind, what is the middle way? What would be the sustainable solution? And what I think would be a very good joining with the town center is if we had a master plan. Where are we going with this? What do we want to look like? What is going to be built here? And let's have a commitment to this village that we co-create. What is the architectural plan for the town that we would like to get to someday? So, thank you.
The last person on the list is Ruth Carter.
Yes, and I chaired planning and zoning for many years, so I know exactly what Kathleen was talking about. I am very conflicted, I must admit, because I spent a good part of the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s fighting sewer and density increases in this part of Fairfax County. In fact, I served on the very first master plan task force, co-chair of the Upper Potomac District for Fairfax County. However, we have to do something to save our business district. I don't know what the best solution is, but I do know that to be a viable community, that we have to have a functioning business district. I think we also need to talk with the business community and see what they are willing to do in the way of proffers on the property, on height restrictions. I don't know whether it is agreeing not to build on the rest of the commercial land. I don't know what it is, but if the community should support sewer, I think that we need to have a contribution from the business community in the way of restrictions on this land, and so that we can maintain the current atmosphere that we currently have in Great Falls. And I think this could be something that could be worked out with the Long Range Planning Committee. So I think you all need to get together and think about what you're willing to give to the community in return for support of the sewer. I don't know whether the second alternative will work. I know what we have now will not work. But I think the Citizens Association certainly is willing to work with you, as are many of the citizens, because we value your contribution to Great Falls and to the life that we all enjoy. And I hope we can come to an amicable solution on this. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who has a burning desire to speak and forgot to sign up, perhaps?
Yes, Ken.
Yes.
If I may. Just quickly, my name is Bryce Elbridge, I'm with Business.8081. And I grew up just outside New York City in Bergen County. And at the time we moved into the town there, the milk came from the cows in that field. It was very rural, very much like this was. And they had, one of the folks there got this idea of zoning everything 2 acres. And people said, why don't you do that? It was septic only, zone 2 acres, a small commercial district just like this. And they kept it that way. If you go back there now, and when we moved down here and left that commercialized whole area of New York City, it was like moving back 10 or 15 years. But we've caught up. If you go back to Bergen County now, and you go look at all the area around there, you'll only find one place that looks like this does now. And that's exactly where they kept the zoning and the sewer and everything else. And my single thought of this is that I agree with Ruth. You need a solution, we need a viable business community, but the sewer, I think, is just, you will sooner or later, you will determine, looking back 10 or 15 years, that that was a mistake. Technology and other better solutions can do it. I like this community the way it is. I'd like to see us solve the commercial problem, but I look back at where I grew up, and it's the only place in Bergen County that even resembles what Great Falls is today.
I'd like to say,
Your name?
I'm Calvin Fallon. I've been here since I was born.
You want to-
I'd just like to say 2 things.
You need to stand out.
Stand up.
All right, we've always been against the sewer line for this development thing. I'm not so much against it because I hate going to the village center and smelling sewer. I think it's pretty pathetic. We need to do something about that, especially in this nice community. I agree with Dee. He said, get the stuff out of here. Something needs to be done about it. Maybe it's bio, maybe it isn't. But the other 2 things I like to say is 2 things that have nothing to do with the sewer, but they do kind of about the sewer. This building was given to the county by residents of Great Falls Historical Society. In that contract, they got to use this building forever for free. That lasted 2 years. Then the county said, we can't do it anymore. Can't agree to that because it's just not affordable. We just can't. So we don't get it no more for free. It lasted 2 years. They gave the best property in Great Falls away. That's what they got. Second thing is the water line. The water line had to go to Chesapeake Drive. Really didn't, but it had to. The country club needed it. So they said Chesapeake Drive needed it, and they ran the water line down there. That was just a little while ago. The water line doesn't stop at Chesapeake Drive. Don't kid yourself. The water line has definitely spurted out. It is in a lot of different places back there. I work in these houses. It's right past your house. All the houses on his street are on water. Don't think it stopped at Chesapeake Drive, because it didn't. They said it would never go any further. It's stopping right here. Well, it went right out. It didn't even stop when they went to Chesapeake Drive and went straight down his street right then and down a couple more. So they can say it's not going to do anything, but that's just for that.
Thank you. Okay, now we need some comments from our district supervisor. Oh, I'm sorry, one more person.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I think many people have, when we use this word restrictions, it has the implication, I guess, of legal restrictions upon the expansion of the sewer capacity.
Sewer
and many
capacity
people
or
have
sewer
some real
district?
doubts as to whether or not, as was just spoken here, you make a law, you make a rule, you make a restriction, and then people find a way to get around it. Is there a technical, physical way to build a sewer line of distinctly limited capacity, so that it's not a question of changing zoning regulations and more people tapping into it, because the sewer line, the new sewer system, would be incapable of handling more than the projected amount that is agreed upon by the association and by the business group.
If I might just say one thing real quick about that. The water line to go to the country club, Chesapeake Drive, was supposed to be, I believe, a 4-inch water line. Mm-hmm. And they supposedly accidentally, it's like double that size. That's what they were told when they went by my house. You know, it's like, why is this thing so over double what you said it was going to be? And it was accidentally built bigger.
So you think a physical constraint wouldn't work?
Well, no.
In the original design.
Huh?
It was always supposed to be the size they installed.
Well, that's not, I remember from being in meetings with you.
DC Water said.
It was going to be a certain size that it couldn't go any further. And then they put the size in that could go further.
50% of the homes in Great Falls are on public water,
Yeah.
and it has not affected the zoning.
Let me try to answer in the November meeting where the county public works people came. We talked about that very issue. And they said that the size of the pressurized main could be defined in such a way as to provide some limitation. We didn't narrow down just where it should be to limit to, say, 30 or 40,000 gallons per day, but they definitely said that can be done.
So that it'd be expensive to make it larger. This would inhibit, I think, developers from putting pressure, saying, well, how about adding one more development on?
Right.
They'd have to
You'd have to rebuild the whole line.
Yeah.
Hey Glenn,
Yeah.
I'd like to speak to something John said. He said that water, 50% of Great Falls is on water and it hasn't affected density. It can't happen now because they changed the rules, but the neighborhood behind Oliver Estates would not have been able to build as many homes they have there because they don't have the sewer septic systems to do that, but they put in water, public water, so they could have septic systems closer together, and they made cluster zoning. Now he's right, but there's a way that they got around it, so I'm saying the other people are right too. So you can't just make these general statements, you got to look into every individual case and get the education. That's what we've been trying to do as a community. Citizens Association is make sure that everybody understands what we're doing here so that there's no surprises. So that's all I wanted to say.
I wanted to go back to one little mistake that Kathleen made on the amount of commercial. The height restriction is one thing, but the allowed floor area is independent of that. So you can't just say because the buildings are now 2 stories and you could go to 4 stories that you could double the area. Doesn't compute. It isn't done that way. The floor area ratio is a separate restriction. And so it isn't really valid to extrapolate the way she did. Now, I've lived in Great Falls since 1972. I fought the good fight, as some of you know, on the water lines and on the water treatment plant that many of you don't even know we fought about. They wanted to put it in Great Falls. And so I probably wrote some of the book about this and studied the Manassas Park and the Sterling Park and other cases, and where the density was spurred in undeveloped areas. And I'm not proud enough to know what the future's going to hold, but we do need to move on to something that's more viable for the long haul. Sewer works, it's what's elsewhere. We also do need to work with the supervisor, if we're going to do this, to carefully define the limits, to do the best we can at keeping the lid on things. I think everybody in the room would go with that. Yes.
You said during your presentation that if we went with the sewer option, that there would need to be a pumping station built.
Let me differentiate. In the case of the normal sewer system, each of the 22 systems would pump to that, to a tank, a big tank. And then in that tank, or attached to that tank, would be a large pump that would pump it the rest of the way up to Colvin Run. In the other sewer alternative, the step sewer, septic tank effluent pump sewer, you don't need the big tank or the big pump because the higher pressure, higher capacity small pumps would be in each system and would have enough pressure to go the 2.5 miles.
Yeah. The question was about public sewer. If we want the public sewer main route, not the Orenco solution, but the public sewer,
Yeah.
there would have to be a pumping station.
Yes.
We don't know where that would be, what it would look like, or if that would simply transfer the odor issue from one part of Great Falls to another. Do we know those answers?
I do know that these kind of tanks can have an odor. I visited the package plant down at...
We take a few minutes for Supervisor Fast to be able to address this. And just be really clear, we decided not to do this as a GFCA board resolution. We decided to take it to the community because we're about as split as you can be on this all the way through the board. So as you know, Glenn's speaking, some of his own thoughts are coming out, some of his, he's done a lot of work, he probably knows more than anybody else on the board about a lot of things, but we'll probably argue as much next Tuesday at our board meeting about how the question is going to be worded than we would our resolutions. And here's John.
Thank you, Jay. First thing I have to is thank Glenn and the Great Falls Citizens Association. This process is textbook. I mean, it's just really an excellent way to reach out to the community and educate the community and to educate the supervisor, and you've just done a great job. I think that, you know, I am looking forward, obviously, to the results of the survey. I'm glad that the Fairfax County staff has been supportive. I can assure you that if the decision is made to go forward, we will continue to be there. We'll get a commitment from them There's a lot of concern in the health department and so forth about the issue of sewer in Great Falls. So this will be on the radar and this will be a priority. Personally, I know that the overriding point in just about everything we do involving land use or any changes in and around Great Falls is we want to preserve the semi-rural character of the community. And that is essential. That's what the community wants. I personally think that it's not an either or, whether the business center has sewer or we have the preservation of the semi-rural character. I think Ruth nailed it, absolutely nailed it. It's going to take back and forth and work with if the decision is made to go forward with sewer at the commercial center. It's going to take a lot of back and forth with the landowners as to how we ensure that after that is done and we solve the sewer problem, we haven't created a development problem that's going to change the character of Great Falls. So that's the kind of thing I would very much look forward to working with the Business Professional Association, Great Falls Citizens Association, and see what we can do to make sure that works. I do want to say that this will not, very sensitive budgets on the table right now, this will not affect anyone's taxes. There's a separate enterprise fund that pays for the sanitary sewer. The Business Professional Association and landowners undoubtedly will be responsible for paying 100% of the cost of getting it to the center, and then would be responsible for the ongoing cost of having the sewer service in Great Falls. So, in terms an issue that will come up, obviously there's a desire, I think, a desire not to extend it out into the residential areas probably. There's something that self-regulates that, and that is just the cost of extending it these days. We just changed the policies on what we expect for an extension of a sewer system, and it has to be within an established sanitary district, which means it have to be, we would have to approve it, which hopefully the supervisor in the office would be responsive to the community if they did want it approved. But if it was approved, it is now very, very expensive to extend to residential homes the sanitary sewer. So anyway, it's it's an issue that I really look forward to working with you on. It's a tough issue, but it's an important issue, and I think it's important to the future of this community that we come to a resolution. So I look forward to working with you, and I understand and I appreciate it, Ralph. It takes a long time to bring these projects to the table, so your timing is good if you're going to go forward with it. So, thank you, and again, I look forward to working with you.
We really appreciate such a supportive supervisor. It's really incredible how much he supported us on many aspects of things that the community wanted to do. Does there anybody have any last words before we adjourn? Don't forget the committee meetings on, sorry.
Does the pumping station make a noise?
Pumping station making noise.
In the step sewer, these are little pumps, like a well pump, that's down in the tank. So unless you're right on top of it, you wouldn't know it's running. In the case of the big pump, it might. I need to look into that a little bit more as we go down. There is a possibility that it could be something you can hear. Doug Cobb has done this.
I built 2 sewer pumping stations for the county, and you can't hear them even when you're standing at the door.
There's some mounted and they're down in the tank, so they're surrounded by water.
The ones I built weren't on a tank system. They were major systems. One at Cedar Run, that was for another county. The one down at Long Bank was the 4th county. there's no noise associated with either of those facilities.
Where would this be located?
Somewhere on the edge of the sewer district, that would have to be determined.
Would it be on Walker Road? Would it be in the shopping center?
It would probably be along Walker Road, right at the edge.
Any doors and so?
Yes, I would gather so. But we've only done a rough comparison of alternatives. That's something that would have to be looked into during the engineering phase if we got to that point. So we didn't try to pick. Well, obviously, the line would go right along the edge of Walker Road, probably up around past the back of the fire station, and then there would be feeder lines into it from the various septic systems. But we didn't design that system.
Are the videos all on our website?
If any of you would like to look into more detail, on the GFCA.org website, we are putting the videos of each of the sessions. Now, it's been a little slow getting them up there, but I'm told that we'll have 4 up in a short order. Each of these is like an hour and a half long. Depending on your interest, we're also going to be sending out an update of this white paper that we picked up tonight. That will be posted on the website, so you can download the entire paper and look at that in more detail.
Consider that a grant too, that'll be another thing that, will be something